Good morning, members of the committee, members of parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to this meeting of the Committee of Parlatino Matters number 2 for today, Tuesday, May the 20th, 2025. We have established a quorum of 6 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the following committee members: MP Edward Duran, MP York, MP Otley, and I have received a notice of lateness, but in the meantime, the member has arrived. Are there any notifications by the other members of parliament? I do have a notification myself. I'd like to send condolences out to the King family. Mr. King was a colleague of mine, and his father passed away. Strength on behalf of myself and my family. Thank you. The agenda points for this committee meetings are: 1, incoming documents. Point 2, discussion on the content, implications, and necessary parliamentary actions regarding the letter from Parlatino register under IS 634, 2024-2025. Point 3, establishing a structured approach for reporting after each Parlatino committee meeting. Point 5, presentations by the committee members of the committee's political, municipal affairs and integration on meetings that were held on October 2024, November 2024, March 2025. Presentations by the committee members of the Committee on Gender Equality, Children and Youth on meetings held in October 2024, November 2024, March 2025. Presentations by the committee members of the Committee of Indigenous, Afro-Descendant people and ethnic groups on meetings held in March 2025. Point 7, presentations by committee members of the Committee on Public Services and Consumer Protection on meetings held in April 2025, and a presentation by the committee members of the Committee of Economic Affairs, Social Debt, and Regional Development on the meetings held in April 2025. Agenda point 2 to 8 were requested by my person, MP Lacroes. And we go over to agenda point 1, incoming documents. All members have received the document for incoming documents for this committee from IS 1-480 for this parliamentary year 2024-2025. This list consists of convocations of meetings, reports of meetings, minutes of meetings, and other documentations related to Parlatino. Are there any comments on proposals on the list as presented? And to which member can I give the floor? There are no objections. Thank you, members. The list and the proposal for handling, as discussed, are approved. And we go over to the agenda point number 2, discussions on the content, implications, and necessary parliamentary actions regarding the letter from Parlatino registered under IS 634, 2024-2025. On February 24th, 2025, Parliament received a letter from the Secretary of the Committee of Parlatino, Congress member Sanchez Arredondo, which was directed to the Secretary General of Parliament based on a communique from him updating Parlatino to the appointment of members of this body to the committees of the Latin America and Caribbean Parliament on February the 6th, 2025. In the letter from Parlatino, the secretary of the committee refers to Article 49 of the Rules of the Latin America and Caribbean Parliament, which states, member parliaments shall join the committee they wish to participate in with 2 representatives. Prior notice and accreditation to the committee's secretariat. Said representatives shall stay in office for at least 2 years and shan't be removed by their respective parliaments unless special circumstances so require it. They may be re-elected or continue to serve as representatives of this notice stating otherwise is received. Committee members shall be appointed by their parliaments within 60 days from the regular assembly or within 30 days following the changes made in the national parliament that require the replacement of committee members. Each Congress, if their rules of procedure permit it and circumstances make it advisable, appoint more than 2 committee members, but their voting rights shall be limited to 2. If only 1 delegate was accredited, or if only 1 delegate attends, it shall accumulate 2 votes. In earlier years, Parliament was a member of 11 Parlatino committees. Currently, the Parliament of St. Martin is member of all 13 Parlatino committees. In each committee, we have minimum 6 and maximum 10 members. Based on the aforementioned rule, Article 49, member parliament join the committee they wish to participate in with 2 representatives. Members of parliament who should stay in office or at least 2 years and who shan't be removed by the parliaments. Going forward, we should consider 1, if after a parliamentary election, we are aware that persons, so members of parliament, will go on to become ministers, those persons shall not be appointed to be members of Parlatino committees. Point 2, according to this article, we should join the Parlatino committee with 2 representatives, as we only have 2 voting rights in the committee. We shall be represented at the committee meeting with 2 delegates, members, or 1 delegate member who would then accumulate 2 votes. Point 3, there is no need to establish the Parlatino committee every year at the start of the new parliamentary year. Based on this correspondence by Parlatino and the rules of Parlatino, this committee shall make a proposal to Parliament as it regards to the membership of the Parlatino committee by members of the Parliament of St. Martin. Points to take into consideration for these discussions are, point 1, should members of Parliament of the similar permanent committee of Parliament be able to be representatives in the Parlatino committee and also in the Parlatino Matters committee? Point 2, is continuity and efficiency gained by a composition and participation of only 2 representatives per Parlatino committee? Point 3, should St. Martin be part of all Parlatino committees, or should a choice be made of committees that could be considered more related to St. Martin's context? To which member of Parliament can I give the floor? MP Jansen-Webster, you have the word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me congratulate you for calling this meeting so that we can inform the public about Parlatino. I think that there are a lot of misconceptions out there about Parlatino and about what parliamentarians do there and what good it can bring for St. Martin, and I think that after today we'll be able to highlight a lot of what goes on there and what we brought back. Regarding the questions that you asked, I do think that there are some committees that, having heard from colleagues, There are some committees that are less relevant for St. Martin, and it's not always, because sometimes there's just this one idea in between that you can still bring back home. But there are some, I think, that are less relevant, and what I would like to see more of is we all have our strengths here in Parliament, and if we could more tailor the strengths of the individual parliamentarians to the groups there. I think that is something I think all of us would like to see, but that would have been my suggestion when I saw you call the meeting, and so that's why I mentioned it. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Jansen-Webster. Do I have any other members that want to chime in on the points? MP Viren Kotai, you have the word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to all, and my colleagues and those tuning in via social media. I as well would like to agree with what MP Jansen has just mentioned, but I'd also like to give a good insight into my discussions, I would say, with yourself, MP Lacroes, MP Labega, and others at Parlatino to focus on one, for example. I was part of the committee with you, I believe, MP Lacroes, for Political, Municipal Affairs and Integration, and the Integration Committee in Parlatino. And the key topics there were on migration, regional cooperation, and the challenges of political will in effecting national transformation. A notable topic was the ongoing migration crisis stemming from Venezuela, with the Netherlands assignment policy brought up as an example, of how Caribbean parts of the kingdom, such as Curacao and Aruba, as well as they were navigating humanitarian obligations under pressure. Concerns were also raised about the uneven distribution of support and the strain placed on small territories with limited resources. Similarly, the situation in Haiti was also highlighted, particularly in terms of regional instability and the burden it places on neighboring countries in terms of migration management and security coordination. So I feel like those were good topics at hand that we had to discuss, and things that we didn't really focus on very within our own internal discussion that was brought from Parlatino, which is why I think it's essential for, one, the networking aspect, and seeing as well what we can bring back to St. Martin. So I do also welcome these discussions, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for holding this meeting.
Thank you, MP. MP Viren, please be reminded that what we're trying to establish now is a discussion on the 3 questions that I stated. If you like, I'll repeat them, because I know it maybe went a little too quick. And the letter that we received concerning 2 members per committee, per Parlatino committee. So I'll repeat the questions. Question 1 was, should members be part of the similar permanent committee of Parliament to be able to be representatives in Parlatino committee and also in the Parlatino Matters committee? So that's question 1. Question 2 is continuity and efficiency gained by the composition and the participation of only 2 representatives per Parlatino committee. Question 3, should St. Martin be part of all Parlatino committees, or should a choice be made of committees that could be considered more related to St. Martin's context? Those were the 3 questions. And I see MP Shamira Roseburg would like the word. MP Roseburg, you have the word.
Thank you, Chairman. Blessed morning to all. The ones listening online, there's nobody in the public tribune. Blessed morning to the SG and my fellow colleagues. In regards to the questions asked, I do believe that the maximum of 2 per committee is sufficient, because together you can fill a car on, but I don't believe that more people should be in one committee. Sometimes even one will be sufficient depending on the topic. I do believe that what my colleague MP Jansen-Webster mentioned, if I understood correctly, that if you have a certain knowledge on a topic, that that should be maybe gerangschikt in order of importance, because let's say if it's a topic that I don't know not a lot about, for example, but I have other member of parliament that is specialized in that topic, to make sure that what is being brought back is on a certain level and understanding, I would say that that member should have voorrang, was it? Preference ongoing. Other than that, in regards to I think you also mentioned that in your introduction, in regards to continuing with Parlatino or choosing between Parlamericas and Parlatino. I don't know if that question was asked, but I still will answer it or give my opinion on it. I do believe that it all boils down to what you bring back. I have seen in the past years that there was a lot of controversy on Parlatino, still is, but I do believe that seeing that more communication takes place in what is being brought back and how it can be beneficial to St. Martin, that the public, and also what can be done legislation-wise, and I do believe in the next pointers that will be discussed, then the public also would understand, okay, why it can be beneficial and why it can contribute to St. Martin's economy or St. Martin's legislation. So it all boils down to communication, and as long as we as members of parliament continue doing so, the public also knows what is being done with the taxpayers' money. Yes, that's it for now in regards to that.
Thank you, MP Roseburg. MP Waver, you have the word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to griffier, support staff, my honorable colleagues here today, and those viewing and listening through whichever media. I also want to commend you, Mr. Chairman, for having this meeting. I think so long in the past, we had persons assume Parlatino what's going on, you know, and now we actually can give it a platform to say what's going on. I think we can see a change has been happening as well, that when members return from Parlatino, we see them actually posting press releases as well to kind of let the people know this is what happened, these are the discussions that took place, and I think a lot of information will also be said here today as well. Having been there once, I believe that to answer your questions, 2 persons max per committee, I think that definitely is sufficient. And I also agree with what MP Jansen-Webster stated, that we can question, do we want to be part of our committees? I think if you really look into it and dive into it, our committees have something, right? And although if we compare large countries to just us as a small island, I think there's in every committee something that we can take home, you know, something we can contribute also to them as well as larger countries. So I believe that, yes, but we need to be strategic in how we put persons on the committees as well. But I don't believe more than 2 persons per committee is necessary. I think if we stick, and I think that's how we've been doing it now as well, that 2 persons. No? Okay, but I guess moving forward, depending how this meeting goes, that's how we will be looking to move forward as well. Yeah, so thank you, and I look forward to the continuation of this meeting to give further information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Waver. MP Dimar Labega, you have the word.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning to the griffier, my fellow colleagues in Parliament, and everybody at home listening. I'd like to commend you, Mr. Chair, for calling this meeting. I do believe this is the first time A meeting was called to report on Parlatino matters since 10/10/10, if I'm not mistaken, from what I was told, which is very important because, you know, you have the sentiment that, you know, we're just traveling and having fun and partying and whatever else people want to think. For my first trip in March, I found it very enlightening. And to me, the main thing is, as was mentioned, strategically placing individuals with their strengths in the different parties, in the different committees, to focus in on their strengths, as well as staying consistent with following up with the delegates that we come in contact with, because I think that's the main part. You make the contact, and you obviously have to nurture the contact, nurture the relationship, and in doing that, you come up with different ideas, you bring it back, and then it becomes fruitful. But if you just go and then you meet people and you don't network, then of course that'll be a loss. So I do believe in the strategic participation in some of the committees. Some of the committees may not have direct implications for St. Martin, but I do believe that there are a lot of good things to be received from it. We just have to zone in on those things. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Labega. I heard from all members that are present, and I must agree with the points that you brought forth. It is, I think, very important that Parliament's members use all their knowledge for the committees that they have, experience in. And I am extremely happy that all here agree with that point. What I think, though, there are a couple meetings. For example, MP Waiver, he's only been to one meeting. I still think that it should be an idea that he experiences one or two other meetings so he sees a little more than what he has seen. But as is, no changes can be made now until the new parliamentary year. So we still have, I think, one or two Parlatino meetings where we'll be able to go over that. As is today, to the question from MP Waiver, we do have more than 2 members per committee, Parlatino committees. But the suggestion is that only 2 should be members of every committee. So, for example, the Committee for Agriculture, the Parlatino Committee for Agriculture, 2 members of Parliament here, and the suggestion is that these 2 members are also part of the Ad Hoc Committee for Agriculture on St. Martin, are part of that meeting in Parlatino. So there's a closed circle. You have a member of Parliament here in Agriculture Committee, also Agriculture Committee in Parlatino, and the reports could be brought back. That is the suggestion. And if all agree to that, then we would maybe call a separate meeting to discuss how we'll put that together. Okay? I'm going to MP Waiver. You want the word?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, I think what I meant to state was that only 2 members travel per committee, in that sense, to Parlatino. So not that they are signed up here in Parliament for Parlatino committees, because I understand 5 persons or whoever who wants to join a Parlatino committee can join within Parliament, but those that actually attend, I think we don't do more than 2 per committee members to travel, so in that sense. But I can understand what you're saying now is that only 2 persons from within Parliament can actually sign up to a committee for Parlatino, and those 2 will travel to that particular committee meeting. Yeah. So I think just to clarify.
Correct. So whenever there's a agriculture meeting, for example, the 2 members who have placed their names on the list for the agriculture, they will be the ones that will attend the Parlatino Committee for Agriculture. And then the request or the suggestion is also that those two members are members of Parlatino Committee first, but also Parlatino Ad hoc Committee for Agriculture here in our Parliament. So those, that is the proposal, and if that is a concession from all, then we should do that. Okay, I'm going to adjourn this meeting for 5 minutes in preparation for the next agenda point. Good morning once again. MP MP Viren Kotai, you'd like the word?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to suggest something. Instead of having it at 2 individuals per committee, we should keep it at 3 individuals per committee, due to the fact that someone from the particular committee maybe they may not be able to make the meeting, due to whatever personal circumstance, and that to me would limit continuity as well. So in order to have a buffer in case of that personal circumstance where one cannot make it, we should keep it at 3 individuals per committee. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Kotai, for your suggestion, and I must agree. I do not know, does anyone else object or agree with the statement from MP Viren? There are no comments, so we go over to the proposals once again. Proposal 1, members should be part of the permanent committee in order to be part of the Parlatino Committee. Proposal number 2, Parlatino members should be part of the Central Committee for Parlatino Matters. Point 3, each committee should consist of 3 members based on their strengths and knowledge, and also for redundancy. Point 4, propose to evaluate choice of committees for St. Martin in the next year. If there are no further comments, the advice will be sent to a central committee for further handling. I hereby close this agenda point. We go over to agenda point 3, establishing a structured approach for reporting after each Parlatino Committee meeting. Based on our membership in the Parliament of St. Martin, of Latin America and the Caribbean, Parlatino, members attend committee meetings, General Assembly meetings, and other meetings in person. One of the recommendations in the report, Audit Public Sector Travel and Parlatino Membership, of our General Audit Chamber was to require post-travel reporting for members of Parliament to promote transparency, accountability, and effectiveness. As it regards especially Parlatino travel and attendance related to its meeting, as chairperson of the Committee of Parlatino Matters, I believe that it is important that we establish a structured approach for reporting after each Parlatino meeting. The structure, as it regards especially Parlatino travel and other participation, can then be taken up into the entire revised travel policy guidelines for Parliament. Points to take into consideration for the discussions are: 1, should each representative report in writing after each meeting, or should the representative that in that committee report collectively in writing after each meeting? Point 2, what is done after the representatives or the committee's members have reported on the travel and participation in Parlatino committee meetings? To which member can I give the floor? MP Labega, you have the word.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel the first step would be a written report summarizing what has been done, action steps moving forward with said topic, whether the action point is to follow up with creating something within Parliament, government, or even the delegation, the other delegates from the other countries. So definitely a written report, and then action steps are definitely needed. Because you can write all the reports you desire, but if there's no action points moving forward, then the written report gets lost. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Labega. MP Jansen-Webster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that additionally to the report, and I think that the report should be done by each committee collectively, as you queried, collectively each committee, and then a compilation made of that entire Parlatino mission with all of the committees, because most of the times we attend 2 or 3 committees at a time. So a joint report of the Parlatino visit of March, for instance, or the Parlatino visit of November. So like that, a joint report, and then at the end of the year, we could have a total report of Parlatino for that parliamentary year, and looking also at the pictures, because we know that when we attend Parlatino, they have professional pictures that are being taken, and that way we can show that we have been there. You can see our participation. There are pictures, videos of us speaking during the deliberations. I think that that will give a good impression of what goes on. So not only just the reporting together with the pictures, we could give the public a good idea of what goes on in Parlatino, and then the report, of course, will show what we brought back. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Jansen-Webster. To chime in a little on the topic, I must commend the members of the Parlatino Committee, even though I thought of it in a different manner, but I must commend on the keeping the people updated on what took place in Parlatino. I have seen, if not from, I think from all, I have already seen articles come out with ideas and what they have done during this Parlatino meeting. So I commend you for that. The idea now is to find a structured way of doing this, and I do concur with your suggestions. MP Jansen-Webster, I think a collective report from all members chiming in for all meetings, because I do not believe that every meeting will have a specific or a final decision, because it continues. So sometimes you will go to a meeting and it is just discussing the law and the troubles that you saw while there, but not necessarily much content in one meeting. So that is why also I took so long. I decided to call this meeting after 3 Parlatino travels and not after the first one. So if there are no further comments, MP Roseburg, you like the word?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to add to that, seeing that I have been to Parlamericas as well, I would like to suggest, and I think it adds to what my colleague MP Veronica Jansen-Webster mentioned, to have like a debriefing session. We're traveling, although it's like different, and then the delegation, how we normally does do it, for example, with Parlamericas. I know Parlatino has it as well, but we can arrange it together with the group that is going for us to have a debriefing session afterwards, and just to structure it more so that it can be more organized and coordinated, even when we're going, when we know, okay, which committees everybody is in, to know, okay, before that there are documents that are being presented so that we know, okay, what was discussed in the previous meetings, and then maybe one of the other members went to that meeting so that you can get some updates. And when we have those reports, you can review those reports, and then we know what was discussed previously. And then afterwards, when we're done with the meetings, to have a session and then bring that all back together. So I just would like to add that to the discussion.
Thank you, MP Roseburg. And exactly that is the point. Once we only have 3 members per committee, then the reporting back will not so much be necessarily because it would be the same members. But I do agree that maybe not only after every meeting that was attended in Parlatino, but that a session, and it does not have to be a committee meeting or, but just a meeting with those who are going to travel, and set goals before we leave. And when we come back, we know that those goals were achieved coming back. So I do agree with that part. If there are no other further comments, okay, I'm going to adjourn for 5 minutes. Meeting adjourned. So now. Thank you, members of parliament. So, agenda point 3, the proposals were 1, a written report per committee attendance that will form part of the mission report. Point 2, at the end of the parliamentary year, a total report is submitted to the Parliament from the Committee of Parlatino members. Do I have any comments concerning the 2 proposals from any members of Parliament? And the proposal from MP Roseburg concerning the debriefing, I think that was something that was going to come up in already in the proposal, to have a meeting after every parliamentary Parlatino meeting. There will be a debriefing. So that is already in the suggestion. If there are no further comments, the advice will be sent to the Central Committee. Can the committee agree? Yes? I already have that. So if there are no further comments, the advice will be sent to the Central Committee for further handling, and I hereby close the agenda point 3. We go over to agenda point 4. Presentation by the committee members or his representative today of the Committee of Political, Municipal Affairs and Integration on meetings held in October 2024, November 2024, and March 2025. Members who have traveled to these committee meetings, Parlatino Committee meetings, myself, MP Lacroes, MP Lewis, MP Roseburg, and MP Kotai. Today, in an effort to allow members of the public to be aware of the discussions had in the different meetings of the Committee of Parlatino, and as the chairperson of the Committee of Parlatino Matters, I found it imperative to 1, establish a structure for reporting after attendance of Parlatino committee meetings, and 2, in the meantime, allow the members via the meeting of the committee to report back and present on their travels, meetings, and discussions during the Parlatino committee meetings. Hence this and the following agenda points. On March 25th, 2025, and on April 14, 2025, Parliament received a letter from my person as chairperson of the Committee of Parlatino Matters with a request for a meeting of this committee with several agenda points. These documents are registered under IS 766 2024-2025 and IS 898 2024-2025. In October 2024, November 2024, and March 2025, members of Parliament participated in a meeting of Committee of Political, Municipal Affairs and Integration of Parlatino. I would like to give the floor to the following member for the presentation, MP Viren Kotai. You have the word.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Once again, good morning, actually, to my colleagues, those tuning in via social media. Once again, apologies. Earlier, I missed the key questions and got carried away with how Parlatino was for me in general. But just to touch back on it, I attended the Political, Municipal Affairs and Integration Committee in Parlatino. Topics were around migration, regional cooperation, and the obstacles of political will in transforming a country as a whole. We discussed a lot on the migration crisis from Venezuela, where the Netherlands' asylum policy, and that was brought up, and how it affects the Caribbean region as well as Curacao and Aruba, who are under pressure with humanitarian obligations. And of course, in St. Martin as well, we are facing the same. Then topics as well on Haiti and the regional instability that it has placed on the neighboring countries, as I mentioned again earlier, in terms of migration management and security. An interesting conversation as well took place between Dr. Mario Gibironi, if I'm pronouncing that correct, of Uruguay, myself, and also MP Labega from our delegation, which was merely focused on the political will necessary to drive meaningful change within any country or nation. He emphasized the need for internal consensus and long-term vision. For us, for example, this resonated with our own experiences here in St. Martin, where despite technical feasibility, the energy transition towards solar and/or wind, as they have in Uruguay, is often slowed by our fragmented political agendas and lack of unified commitment, especially in the past. But in Uruguay, for example, it was different. There was political agreement all across the board, which helped them excel in this field. This committee also agreed on the importance of coordinated policy and shared responsibility across the region, and the urgent need, of course, to strengthen political cohesion to address both immediate crisis and long-term development goals. There was also a suggestion made by MP Lacroes, the chair himself, which he reminded me of, the possibility of allowing foreign embassies to establish a presence in St. Martin to assist their nationals with services such as passports, IDs, and/or driver's licenses. This initiative was heavily discussed as a way to strengthen the diaspora communities in our country by improving access to essential documentation and support from their home nations. It's good food for thought, in my opinion, and also needing further discussions. And just to close off, in my opinion, I understand for years there's been a certain, thought of what Parlatino was and, what it is, but it is good that from my first meeting in Parlatino, it was already told by others that, wow, we have now a proper full St. Martin delegation who is attending these meetings and also engaging in these meetings. So it can be very beneficial, especially when meetings are attended consistently and engagement is focused on the committees that are most relevant to St. Martin, as we discussed earlier. And the networking and meaningful conversations that arise from these sessions are definitely a valuable advantage. And as long as we together continue to engage in these discussions as what we've agreed on earlier, I believe that as we move further, more can be brought back to St. Martin. That would be it for me, and I would hope to continue these discussions as it is beneficial for all of us and our people of St. Martin to understand what we are doing. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Viren Kotai. And I'd like to chime in. I think a lot of the times our population is not properly educated with what the task of a member of parliament is and what is Parlatino. So through these meetings, I hope that we can elaborate and explain the population exactly what the idea and, what do we get out of Parlatino. And you use some proper examples on things that we got from there and we brought back here to St. Martin. So thank you for that, MP Viren Kotai. Any other member would like to chime in on that point? If not, I hereby close agenda point number 4. We go over to agenda point 5, presentation by the committee member or its representative of the Committee of Gender, Equality, Children and Youth on meetings held in October 2024, November 2024, and March 2025. The members whom have traveled to these meetings were MP Jansen, MP Roseburg, and MP York. In the same letter, as mentioned in the previous agenda point, the aforementioned agenda point was requested in October 2025, November 2024, and March 2025. Members of Parliament participated in the meetings of the Committee of Gender Equality, Children and Youth and of Parlatino. I would like to give the floor to the following member for her presentation, MP V.C. Jansen-Webster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning again. I made up a brief presentation so that I can show what was done at the meeting in Parlatino for youth gender equality, adolescents and youth. First of all, if I talk about my experience there, the language, of course, was a barrier. However, I considered myself fluent in Spanish, but the Spanish that we speak here, let's say amongst each other on the street, is completely different Spanish than the Spanish that you speak there, which is business Spanish. So we had to resort in using a lot of technology, translation technology, and that was quite useful because you could take pictures.
MP Jansen?
Yes.
1 second, I'd like to adjourn for 1 minute to make sure that your presentation is also seen on the live.
Okay.
Meeting adjourned for 1 minute. In the meantime, we have sorted it out. MP Jansen-Webster, you can continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was saying, because of the language barrier, we could use technology though. What we did in our group was we could take pictures of the screen and instantly translate. You could also use the translation using the phone and listen and watch and read the translation at the same time. So we could follow. Of course, knowing a bit of Spanish helped a lot. What was good about actually traveling there is that you become part of a group. You meet fellow parliamentarians who work on similar issues or who are passionate about similar issues. And so I have become a part of the WhatsApp group for the Gender Equality, Children and Youth Parlatino Committee. And as such, we can continue outside of Parlatino with exchanging information amongst the countries. One of the topics at this, in this committee during the March session, one of the topics was on the use of technology in classrooms. And the second one was on teenage pregnancy and reproductive health. And I wanted to speak today more about the teenage pregnancy and reproductive health. What we have seen, when we look at the regional context, what is seen is that in Latin America and the Caribbean, we have the second highest rate of adolescent fertility, so teenage pregnancy, next to sub-Saharan Africa. What they have identified in Latin America is the indigenous and Afro-Descendant youth are the ones who primarily are faced with teenage pregnancy, girls in rural and low-income communities, and also adolescents with limited access to education and health services. And according to the United Nations Population Fund, which is the United Nations Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency, we see there that almost half of all pregnancies in the region are unintended, and maternal deaths also nearly doubled between 2020 and 2022. Despite there is now more access to contraceptives in the region. Now, this reality shows that while we've made progress, significant inequities persist, and they cost us more than just health outcomes, and they cost us lives, opportunities, and national development. When a young person becomes pregnant at an early age, it leads to the inability to enter into the workforce until that child enters play school or enters the school system, etc. So it slows down basically your national development. It affects lives. And so moving along, we looked at the key findings in this Parlatino Committee. We saw there that the committee presented a framework standard for the prevention of teenage pregnancies, and that included the rights-based approach, the education and access, and the participation and accountability. When we looked at the rights-based approach, we looked at recognizing adolescents as rights holders. So they have, so people with rights, not just looking at them as minors or looking at them as children. So they have access to age-appropriate education and services, protection from early unions and sexual violence, so early marriage and go live together with someone, etc. And also the recognition of the intersectionality faced by LGBTQ, youth, migrants, girls, and disabilities. Now, what that means there is the overlapping areas which could lead then to discrimination. So we looked at all of that, and then when you look at education, we looked at incorporating comprehensive sexuality education in schools, and also affordable contraceptive and STI testing. And this is an issue that you might not think, but it's an issue that hits closer to home than we'd like to admit. And number 3 was the participation and accountability. Adolescents must be part of the design, implementation, and monitoring of these programs. Their voices are not optional, they are essential. This is what was discussed there and what we think is relevant that we can bring back to St. Martin as well. Now, the outcome of the meeting was the approval of the draft law, Norma Marco para la prevención de embarazos en la adolescencia en América Latina y el Caribe. So the draft law for teenage pregnancy prevention in Latin America and the Caribbean. Now, when we look at St. Martin and our local realities and concern, having come back from this mission, I consulted with Dr. Faye van der Dijs and Ms. Judith Bell of the AIDS Foundation, and we discussed the overlapping issues of teenage pregnancy, STI transmission, and lack of access to healthcare. And I can highlight a number of points here. Things that came up. The financial barriers remain one of the biggest obstacles. Even subsidized testing and contraception can be unaffordable for many of our adolescents. There's a rise in chlamydia and trich, which limits the oral testing options and constrained STI screening beyond HIV. And while HIV testing is offered quarterly in brothels, comprehensive sexual health services for the wider adolescent population are insufficient. Schools are only equipped to provide evidence-based sexual health education, and trained professionals for outreach are lacking. So you see where there's a lot going on in our society, and having been to Parlatino, it opens your eyes, especially coming back and then following up with our local stakeholders. It opened our eyes to what is going on St. Martin. So then we looked at what is the legislative and policy considerations for St. Martin. So based on the Parlatino framework and the needs identified in our community, I propose we consider legislation guaranteeing free or low-cost access to contraceptives and STI testing for adolescents aligned with the age of consent. Why do I say that? The age of consent, sexual consent, versus the age that it is now. Right now, we cannot give contraceptive to minors. However, the age of consent is lower, and the age that we know and we have seen and the stakeholders can attest and have indicated that children are sexually, or minors are sexually active, the age is lower than the age that by law we can give them contraceptives. So that is legislation that is needed to change, and it's something that I have been working on. To develop a national sexual health curriculum implemented in all schools with support from trained professionals. What we do have now and what I have been a part of for many years before was the Girl Power and the Real Talk sessions that take place in the schools every year. And in those sessions, which are administered by the AIDS Foundation, in those sessions, we teach children. It's based on abstinence, but it does teach the young people about how to protect themselves and also the consequences of being sexually active. And then another consideration would be strengthening the public-private partnership with health NGOs like the AIDS Foundation, and to improve the outreach and service coverage, incorporation of STI prevention, including HPV and HIV, into all reproductive health policies and school programs. The HIV and AIDS awareness has been very successful, but there's not much awareness about HPV. And it's also, both that start with the age, they stay in your body. So it's important for people to also know about HPV and the prevention and also the risks that are linked to these two. And then fifth, a national tracking and reporting system disaggregated by age, ethnicity, and gender to address service gaps more effectively. What I learned after visiting the AIDS Foundation is that a lot of the data that they had, they no longer have. So we need to work on that. And lastly, I just found today in the newspaper a letter in the Queenie where a young person is asking to really speak to their mother. It's not so clear there, but they're asking to speak to their mother about sex and boys. But the mother is embarrassed, and so the conversation never happens. And I wanted to highlight it here because this is what we need. We need the parents, they need to be able to speak to their children, because when you don't speak to your children, and when we as a whole country, we do not speak to the young people, they put themselves in danger. And the consequences of what they do today, they can see it later on in life, especially when you look at HPV and HIV. That basically concludes what I wanted to say about what our committee did. And as you can see, we brought it back. When I said that there was a lay macro proposed, this is then the entire document that was given to us, and this can be translated and used in each of the countries that participate in Parlatino. So St. Martin can literally, we can use this. As we know, Parliament often doesn't have the funds for legal to support making a really good law. Now you have a complete document that just needs adjusting, and that is why I was definitely impressed with going to Parlatino. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Jansen-Webster. Webster. Do any one of the other members would like to chime in or comment on the presentation by MP Jansen-Webster? Yes. MP Roseburg?
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, thank you for that presentation. I was also on the trip, and we discussed when MP Jansen-Webster spoke about the topic, how much information she got back out of that session that she participated in. And I find it very interesting to see that even today in the newspaper, she saw that this topic is so important. And I was recently, without mentioning the place where I was, discussing a similar topic, that there's a disconnect between the youth and their parents, that they often don't know how to communicate about topics like that because it's taboo. And then often when it goes wrong, then the conversation is being had, and then it's often too late. So it's very good that more light is being shed on this matter, and based on the presentation and the suggestions given, we should surely look into how we as members of parliament can contribute to that. So I commend the MP on the presentation given. That's it for now.
Thank you, MP Roseburg. MP Webster, Jansen-Webster, I must commend you on your presentation. It was thorough and very informative. Is there any way that you could post your presentation maybe on your own page or share it with the other members of parliament so we can do the same, as it is very insightful? If there are no other further comments, I hereby close this agenda point. We go over to agenda point number 6, presentations by committee members of the Committee of Indigenous, Afro-Descendant People and Ethnic Groups on the meeting held in March 2025 by MP Kotai and MP Labega. In the same letter as mentioned in the previous agenda point, the aforementioned agenda point was requested. In March 2025, members of parliament participated in the meetings of the Committee on Indigenous, Afro-Descendant People and Ethnic Groups of Parlatino. I would like to give the floor to the following member for his presentation, MP D.C. Labega. You have the word.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So indeed, we participated in the Indigenous Peoples Committee. We had representatives from Costa Rica, Mexico, Paraguay, Uruguay, Panama, and Nicaragua also logged on via online. Topic 1 was mining exploitation. Topic 2 was regulation regarding the extract of natural resources. Topic 3, the protection of the Amazon and the relation with climate change. So given the topics, for a small country like St. Martin, couldn't really relate much, but acknowledging this, topic 1, mining, we didn't have any contribution there. Topic 2, regarding the extract of natural resources, what I did is I focused on the world's natural resource, which is the ocean. So I believe that that's a natural resource that we use, which is called the blue economy. And the blue economy, for those of you who do not know, is a sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, jobs, while preserving the health of our oceans ecosystem. So it was quite insightful, given that I'm the chairman of the Committee for Agriculture, Fisheries, and Animal Husbandry, which I wasn't at the time. So it did come in hindsight, come in well. And I have consistent contact with the representative from Costa Rica who found insightful to also discuss the blue economy when it comes to food sustainability, etc. We addressed and we also spoke about the creation of a sustainable blue economy while balancing conservation efforts with economic activity such as fishing, coastal development, and protection, which is very relatable to us here in St. Martin as we develop and find the balance between protecting our coastlines. Topic 3, the protection of the Amazon in the relation with climate change, deforestation, etc. I tied that in with our hilltop policy to make a relation when it comes to erosion, overdeveloping on the hilltop, etc. So that's how I tied that in. Those are some of our concerns, our major concern that we have here in St. Martin. We have to build up. We don't have any more flat land. So, but other than that, it was mostly just listening and connecting. This is a committee that I believe we do not necessarily have to be a part of, given the main core context is Indigenous people and their issues, so to speak. But in all, I did find it insightful, and I do look to continue communication with some of the delegates from the other countries. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, MP Labega. Any other member would like to chime in or comment on the point brought forth by MP Labega? MP Roseburg, you have the word.
Thank you, Chairman, sorry, my apologies. Seeing what was brought forward by MP Labega, this also shows by participating in the different, how do you call it, different sessions and committees. Thank you. In different committees, you can also see, okay, what can contribute to St. Martin and what not, or what is beneficial to St. Martin and what not. And the MP, based on his experience, he mentioned, okay, he's of the opinion that this committee at this point cannot benefit St. Martin. So, like, participating in the different committees, you will see what can and what cannot benefit St. Martin. And I do believe that that's also a way of evaluating what is beneficial and what not.
Thank you, MP Roseburg. If there are no further comments, I would like to close this agenda point. Agenda point closed. And I'd like to adjourn for 1 minute. Meeting adjourned for 1 minute. Point 7, presentation by the committee members of the Committee of Public Services and Consumer Protection on meetings held in April 2025, MP Viren Kotai and MP Lacroes. In the same letter as mentioned in the previous agenda point, the aforementioned agenda point was requested. In April 2025, members of Parliament participated in the meetings of the Committee of Public Service and Consumer Protection of Parlatino. I would like to now take the floor myself with a brief explanation on what took place in the previous meetings and its continuation. So, the agenda point is based on the meeting held in April, which MP Duran's name is not in it, but he also attended this meeting. And we have decided after coming out of that meeting, the committee itself, for the last couple of meetings, have drafted a law which we now are revising as a team. We have also, and if you remember, that an article came out concerning the law. The Minister of VSR has also reached out and asked for a work visit from that committee so we could present to him exactly what we were thinking about and form some type of collaboration. That meeting is scheduled for Friday coming. But the law basically, as I indicated before, it's a model law on labeling and processed and ultra-processed food products for human consumption and health protection. I have, in the meantime, we have translated the law, so we will be sitting down with the minister to get his departments up to date on what we found and what we are planning to bring forward. So one of the examples I used was the use of potassium bromate in different foods. For example, in the EU, this is banned, but in St. Martin and the US, it's allowed. This is a substance that has been flagged as a substance that could cause cancer. And I must state that if I was not part of the Parlatino Committee, that I would have never thought about this, because we always assume that what we are eating, that it's controlled, that it is healthy, that these FCCA products and controlled by the US, everything is handy, but at the end of the day, we know now, I am fully aware that that is not the case, because two types of products are made. One that is allowed in the EU, and it's the same product. So I don't want to mention, for example, a cornflakes that is allowed in the US and sold to the Caribbean, but then at the same time, this is not, this type with these substances in it is not allowed in the EU. So the idea, the model and the law that we are trying to look at and work on is one to come a little in line with the EU and the rest of the kingdom. So one of those substances, for example, the potassium bromate, the titanium dioxide, E171, which is banned since 2022, is still allowed in the US and on St. Martin, but not in EU. And the health concern for that is, for example, damage to your DNA. So these are the things that we've been going over and looking at. I have also prepared 15 questions that are being booked in today to the Minister of VSR, which we will make public by the end of the day. And these questions are related to this topic when it comes to the food safety on St. Martin. So again, like I mentioned, if I personally, I don't know about the others, if I was not part of the Parlatino, this would have never passed my mind, never, at no point. And seeing the strain that our health system is going through with so much people with cancer, with, diabetes. The law also speaks of what is sold in schools. And for us here on St. Martin, there is no control. Sweets and snacks are sold in schools, while the law speaks of selling fruits and healthy snacks. So this is something that definitely we are working on, and hopefully sooner than later, we'll be able to send it through the chains to be revised and brought on the floor of Parliament to be voted upon. Thank you. Do I have any comments, any suggestions from the other members? MP Webster?
Yeah, just, Mr. Chair, just in reaction on what you said, indeed, had I not gone to Parlatino, I would also not have followed up and found out a lot of information about reproductive health and what we're doing in St. Martin. And that coming from someone who was minister for 7 months. But then there's this extra additional aspect that you learn when you sit in a group like that. So I heard you echo the same thing, and yeah, I thank you for that.
Thank you, MP Webster. And we close agenda point 7. And we go over to agenda point 8. Presentation by the committee members of the Committee of Economic Affairs, Social Depth and Regional Development on meetings held in April 2025, MP Waiver, MP York, IS 7 666 2024-2025, dated March 2025, and IS 898 2024-2025, dated April 14, 2025. In the same letter as mentioned in the previous agenda point, the aforementioned agenda point was requested. In April 2025, Member of Parliament participated in the meetings of the Committee of Economic Affairs, Social Depth and Regional Development of Parlatino. I would like to give the floor to MP Waiver. MP Waiver, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as I mentioned earlier as well, this was my first experience traveling to Parlatino. So, of course, I was very open-minded and trying to see what can I observe from there. And I also decided when I came back in another mean to kind of inform the people of St. Martin of my travels, I also put out a press release. But for those that did not read it, I will also go kind of through it, because in a nutshell, that is what it was about. 3 main topics were discussed in that committee meeting. So first it was agriculture, then they dealt with tourism, and also the addressing of alternative energy. And these 3 topics are discussed locally as well and are affecting us at the moment as well. In the case of agriculture, the key discussion resolved around agriculture. Many of our South American neighbors are actively working on cross-border trade agreements within the Latin American region. Their goal is to collaborate and strengthen agriculture resilience together. This, of course, struck a chord with me as we too are exploring ways to grow our local agriculture output, and also even in a smaller scale, you know. So we listen to what they are going through on a larger scale, but it still affects us locally, and there's certain strategic means in which they look to make certain agreements, and even St. Martin as a hub and looking at where we are strategically placed within the region. We can also be part of those kind of discussions as well and see how we can benefit from it. So we must ask ourselves what is feasible with our neighboring islands, what partnerships can we develop, not only with our islands, but also with our Latin America partners as well. How can we reduce dependency and increase the food security in local ways, you know? So because that, I think globally right now, that is one of the main topics that are being discussed, is food security all across different nations. And then the second topic which we delved into was the tourism aspect of it. And you can see too that their tourism product, they're looking at partnering up as well with their neighboring countries to see how can we partner up to kind of increase tourism, but not only get persons there, but also looking at flights, how to get cheaper flights across countries. So basically what we're looking at as well within the Caribbean, how can we increase and also reduce the pricing of, let's say, our Caribbean flights. Like, for example, one example that I mentioned there as well, we had our sister island there, Curacao. So I mentioned that even to go to Curacao, sometimes the price is so steep that persons rather go to another country like America, Miami, depending on the season, you know. So those are things we can look locally to work on, and also to partner up with our regional islands as well to see what can we do to help reduce those fares and also increase the tourism. One of the things I mentioned there as well was that, you know, Latin America has a great product, touristic product. The only thing, the concern they have is the safety aspect of their countries, because quite often, and me myself as well, never traveled to Latin America, but once we mention the name of any Central America, Latin America country, safety always is one of the issues that persons automatically go to. How safe is it to go to Brazil, to go to Argentina, to go to these countries, Colombia? And I told them as well, their main competitor really is Europe, right? The European market, because when you look at history, people want an experience, right? So when they look at history, I told them, Europe has the same historical value as you. The only thing you have to work on right now is also how you are perceived to those traveling to your countries. So that was my input, because when we look at the media, it plays a big role as well. So they also have to kind of take control of the media and how they are depicted out there. So a lot of those things as well to us, what you can take away from that as well is like, I gave my input as how I see it from an outsider, hopefully, and they agreed as well as to what they're doing, and they're trying to change their image, right? The safety image when it comes to traveling there. And when we look at ourselves, we also have to see as a touristic point of view, we have a lot of history on St. Martin as well. How can we tap into these things? Because persons are no longer traveling to buy cheap jewelry and stuff like that. We want to experience, right? That is something that often what you hear from the tourists traveling nowadays, you want an experience. So how can we offer that? And sometimes we can partner with different islands and offer a unique experience, you know, so to bring the tourists here. So those were discussions had that we actually had an input as St. Martin and actually advising the bigger countries and giving a voice as to how we see it and what they can take away from that as well. And lastly, the other topic, which was discussed briefly, I think that was a discussion that we hear on St. Martin as well. I mean, we have MPs here that are pushing for alternative energy, right? So those are conversations that's being held as well. Right here, we talk about LNG and other possibilities, where they discuss more as different alternative energies from Asia and seeing how they can tap into those things, you know? Although what we're looking at and the concerns is, of course, the cost of it. You know, initially it might be more expensive to do. And I think that's the case with anything, whether we go solar energy, wind power, wave energy, those are all kind of alternative energies we can tap into. But of course, it's going to take a big investment for St. Martin as well. But it's something to explore, right? Because we want to be able to still combine a solar energy or wind energy, alternative energy with what we have right now, which is the fossil fuels. Because I think at the end of the day, the size we need to be able to combine something to produce something else for the people of St. Martin to reduce the cost eventually, right? But we also need a backup because we know where we are in the hurricane belt and where we are situated. And what was interesting is these are all discussions which we had in Parlatino that's so relevant to what we're facing right now as well. And even last week when we had a conversation with the Dutch delegation when they were here, you know, these are the same conversations that came up even with them, with the Dutch Prime Minister. You know, they are also looking at food security. You know, they are also looking at alternative energy. You know, those are elements that even in the Netherlands that they are now struggling with and looking at alternative ways, you know, because believe it or not, we feel that because we are going through a crisis energy-wise, the Netherlands actually is also right now, at this moment, going through an energy crisis. And you wouldn't think so because they were looked at the poster child of what energy is and alternative energy. But right now, there is an energy crisis within the Netherlands as well. So it's very the reality of what's going on, and it helps us to relate back to our kingdom partners as well, what's going on, and the effects of the global situation which we're living on. And also what I'm looking at is, and this is what I took away from Parlatino, but I also brought it forth when we had a discussion with the Dutch Prime Minister when he was here, and make it more relevant to what we're dealing with, is don't look at our size, you know, because the same situation what we're facing right now, it might look small to a bigger country, but on the scale, it's pretty much the same as what the bigger countries are dealing with. So look at us as we're going through it globally, through the same situations. So how can we handle it and tackle it together, you know? So it brings and opens up the mind as to what the other nations and globally what's happening around the world, and bring it back home and make the people of St. Martin and enlighten them of the reality of the global situation right now, you know, and how can we tackle it? Because it's not only a St. Martin issue, it seems to be a global issue that everybody is going through. Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me the opportunity to discuss my experience in Parlatino. And I think it's information that will benefit us not only locally, but within the kingdom as well. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Waver, for that insightful presentation and discussion. Are there any other members that would like to chime in on that point? I would like to do so myself when it comes to, I heard the member mention LNG, and he is fully aware that I am a proponent of that change on St. Martin, and it is so actually eye-opening because at a Parlatino meeting, we were made aware of Aruba Web going fully LNG, but also a transshipment port being built in San Nicolas for LNG, which would automatically mean that the prices of energy that the population of Aruba will be paying in the next 2-3 years would be 40% cheaper. I am fully also aware that a couple letters came in asking for a meeting with the honorable members of parliament, and I understood from SG that will be scheduled in. So we will have a separate meeting to be able to divulge and go over the possibility of that in combination with any other form of cheaper electricity on St. Martin. So thank you, MP Weaver, for that insightful presentation. I also would like to give MP Roseburg the opportunity to give us insight on the presentation from the Committee of Human Rights, Justice, and Prison Policies, which she will do so now.
Thank you, Chairman. I also have a presentation. I am not sure if it is seen. Yes, perfect. I always say that everything happens for a reason. When I went to Panama for the Committee Human Rights, Justice, and Prison Policies, that was in March 2025, a very interesting topic was discussed. I was there with different committee members from Uruguay, from Colombia, from Venezuela, from different countries. And an interesting topic that was discussed was prison reform and communication access. Why am I saying interesting? Because seeing the recent developments on St. Martin and in regards to the prison and the building of a new prison, I keep on saying everything happens for a reason. Why? In Uruguay, I will go to the next slide. In Uruguay, mobile phones are allowed in the prison. Inmates are allowed mobile phones under strict rules. The phones, for example, need to be registered. It was established that it promotes mental well-being, and also it reduces contraband issues. Why am I bringing it forward is because on St. Martin, the current situation, mobile phones are not allowed, but you have, for example, public phones, that the accessibility to public phones that is currently very much limited. And during the discussion, it was mentioned that having the accessibility to the mobile phones, and I will explain the benefits after, it has certain benefits. So currently on St. Martin, phones used illegally due lack of public phones, security risk without regulation, no structured communication plan, and missed opportunities for reintegration. It can be looked at. The benefit of structured access, what was mentioned, for example, in Uruguay, is that it supports family ties. It encourages behavior improvement. It can be like a point system. It enables educational engagement. And also it's controlled access because it will be less smuggling. And so what was discussed to look into the different countries can, for example, look into introducing such a policy as Uruguay has, to have, for example, a trial for low-risk inmates, mobile phones being allowed with supervision, set hours and monitor the content, and also have a partnership, for example, with the telecommunication providers. So, for example, you can develop internal guidelines. This all was discussed within the committee that I just mentioned. if policy or legislation is needed, but also have stakeholder consultation, for example, with Justice, TIAT, and others, and then have a periodic review so that there is transparency in that sake, so that what currently is happening, for example, can be monitored and no contraband or less contraband will be accessible. And it was interesting to see that a country as Uruguay had that regulated, because seeing the need of it and also looking at it from a broader perspective. So I most probably will be looking through the Justice Committee to see what the members of the Justice Committee think of such a policy, and also see what position we can formulate through the Justice Committee and bring that forward to the Minister of Justice. So it's very nice to see how, for example, within Parlatino, having a session like that on such a topic, that information can be brought back to St. Martin and look into the possibilities for country St. Martin, especially seeing our current prison reforms and also knowing that the Justice Ministry and also within the Justice Committee, we discussed that to have the legislation in regards to the prison reformed, and the Justice Minister agrees with amending the legislation. So that will be actively worked on, and maybe this can also be looked into, because also on human rights, and that the committee is also about the human rights, justice and prison policies. On a human rights level, it is mentioned that accessibility and contact with family should be guaranteed, and currently that is not the case, how it should be on international levels. So this was very much insightful, and I would like to bring it to the Justice Committee to see what we can do on that matter. That was the first presentation. I will now go over to the second presentation, if you allow me to do so. That is in regards to another topic. I will, let me see where the presentation is. Moment. Yes, I will now go over to the next presentation, if you allow me, Chairman. Thank you, I see you do so. Before I start with that presentation, together with MP Kotai, Lacroes, and MP York, we also had other interesting session. I will provide the members that are present here today with goodies. The ones that are not present will receive so after. There you go. Yes, I will now start with my presentation on behalf of also the MP Kotai, Lacroes, and MP York. As you can see, I here have Ley Olympia, America Latina. What does that mean? This presentation will go about the digital rights and Ley Olympia. The Ley Olympia comes from Mexico. As we all know, social media is a core part of our daily lives. That's a fact. But it's also a tool, and we have seen it recently, and I continue saying everything happens for a reason. And maybe it's also very, everything happens for a reason. I'm presenting this matter, but social media is now a core part of our daily lives. But it's also a tool to use to humiliate, harass, and control people. We have seen women, young persons, but also men are being targeted. So in Mexico, it shows how the digital rights can be legally protected. And it was very interesting. It wasn't in a committee, but it was being in Panama and connecting with all the persons there that we met, this young lady who was having a presentation about Ley Olympia because she herself was a victim of sexual abuse, and that being shared on social media. So social media being used as a weapon to, for example, shame, bully, leak videos, fake accounts, viral harassment, and often victims feel powerless and humiliated. We all have heard about cyberbullying and revenge porn. Often it can go unpunished. Ley Olimpia is criminalized in Mexico, and that shifted the legal system to protect also the digital system currently at hand. The question you should ask, how can we connect Ley Olimpia to St. Martin? Current laws on St. Martin don't mention the digital violence. So what we need to do is define, for example, the online sexual abuse, digital stalking and harassment, distribution of intimate images without consent. You have it mentioned in the law, but specifically the online concept, nowadays we need to make sure that that is amended. And I see the Ley Olimpia as a template for what is possible. That was discussed in our group, as I mentioned, together with MP Kotai, York, and Lacroes. So we need to look into amending the penal code to include the digital part of abuse offenses. Define, for example, also new criminal and civil penalties. But also have that discussion with the stakeholders, because we have been seeing that currently a lot of persons are using social media as tools and there are no consequences connected to it. Recently, yesterday, I received a message from a young lady that mentioned, I'm being abused online and this person does not seem to stop, and this person is threatening to take it to another person to have it on a higher level without mentioning names. What can I do? And again, it connected to the part, everything happened for a reason, because we're now discussing this Ley Olimpia and how we can make sure that this is also regulated by law. So to conclude, the 4 members, as I mentioned, joint commitment to making sure that these laws are amended to protect our youth, women, and actually all citizens from abuse online and offline in any shape or form. Because enough is enough, and we need to make sure that we protect our people, and therefore we will make sure that we amend the laws needed that reflects today's digital world. And we will ensure justice doesn't stop at the screen. I thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, MP Roseburg. Thank you for your presentation. And MP Roseburg forgot to mention one of the most important parts of the Ley Olimpia. It was that this was not a meeting that we were scheduled to go into. After we finished the meetings that we were scheduled to, we joined this meeting and took this out of it, and it shows the commitment from the members of parliament to actually, while on Parlatino matters, travel to work and get things moving in the direction. So I thank MP Roseburg again, once again, for the goodie, but also for her insight on pushing, being the spearhead in this topic to move forward. MP Jansen-Webster would like the word? Yeah, Mr. Webster. For some reason, I keep looking at MP Weaver and tell Mr. Jansen, I'm sorry, that's not the idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I really applaud the members of Parliament of St. Martin attending this Ley Olimpia, and this is the first time I'm hearing of it, but I am hoping that we can bring this back to St. Martin and really implement it. And if there is, just like the one for teenage pregnancy Ley marker that exists, please, let's work on that. That's one that definitely I will work together with anyone on, because I have been doing the research as well on how how we can stop the cyberbullying, because it has been going on for a while. Our community is plagued with it. Not all young people can handle it, and not everyone in society can handle it. I have had to deal with it since the elections in January 2024, and it continues. It's the same person, the same people. It continues and it continues, and you look at what avenues do you have? Can you go to the police? What can you do? Because then you get, it's growing up on a farm again. It's just like when you have chickens in a coop, and one starts to pick, and then all starts to pick. There's even a term for it with cyberbullying. It's called dogpiling. You get everyone dogpiling on top and adding and reposting, and you don't know what the effects are for the person. So what I do, and I have done even since when we had the particular person in St. Martin who was attacking various politicians, I would not share his videos. At a given moment, you just don't share it, because then at least you kill it by you. But there is no law. When I researched, there was no law protecting us, and that is why I'm glad that MP Roseburg brought this back from Parlatino, and that other parliamentarians from us also participated, and so they too can sign on to this. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Webster. MP Roseburg, you'd like the word?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your contribution as well, MP Jansen-Webster. Indeed, what we need to realize is, and I think it also boils down to us as elected officials and government as well, making sure that we inform and educate our community, because it's very sad to see that stuff like this, and especially when you're harming or can harm other people or bully other people. Some have a broader back than others, but that is shared multiple times and liked and commented on. But when it's something educational, that doesn't happen, or it happens less. So we have a job to do, and often it just boils down to amending the law or making the punishments higher. As you can see, for example, when it boils down to huiselijk geweld, help me please. Domestic violent cases, those are punished higher than regular violent cases. So if you look at cyberbullying, for example, you can also add a higher punishment to that, and that hopefully will make the community aware that if I do this, or if I share this, I'm punishable by law, and I would not want that. So yes. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, MP Roseburg, and thank you, MP Webster, once again, for the comments. Funny enough, someone just sent me a message and said, where do we draw the line between freedom of speech, freedom of press, with the topic that we're discussing right now? And I definitely would just literally say there's a difference between bullying and bringing information forward, or attacking those that don't pay you. I know MP Webster wanted to say that, but I said it. And at the end of the day, fair publications, and just being transparent, I think those are things that we don't have here. And I think it's a problem in a lot of places in the world, but we will make our voices heard, and we will make sure that eventually either policies or laws are brought forth to deal with this situation. MP Roseburg wanted the word?
Yeah, short, Chairman, because you highlighted that topic. We also, and that is also, again, a connection to Parlaméricas, where we discuss in regards to media. What do you consider media? And the media laws, are they regulated? And if not, how can we make sure that they are regulated so that there are consequences when you write certain things? Because yes, you have freedom of speech, but you also have, there's a thin line, and I do believe that we need to evaluate our media laws if there are any on St. Martin and make sure that adjustments are made and that you keep up with the media standards. So I would like to add to that, that also that is something that I'm personally looking into, and other members that are also looking into it, we can maybe team up together and make sure that that is properly regulated. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Roseburg. And if there are no other comments, I'd like to make one more comment, and that will be that I thank the members of the Committee of Parlatino. We have been at it for almost 3 hours, very insightful, and I hope that today the population sees the benefits and the benefits to come on the participation of their parliament to the Parlatino. So if there are no further comments, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this meeting. I thank you all for your participation, and I hereby close this meeting. Thank you.